Hi everyone, good to meet you. My name is Joshua GERON. I'm an AI strategy director at Datarobot. I'm really excited to be here today to represent Datarobot at Big Data London, and speak with one of our local customers, OVO Energy. So I'm joined today by Katie Russell, who is a data director at OVO Energy. Katie, would you like to give a quick intro?
Sure, data director at OVO Energy.
Okay, sounds good.
Do you want more?
We can cover it later. So just before we get into the agenda for today, wanted to cover a little bit around who we are as Datarobot. So Datarobot has been an industry leader in the AI space for well over a decade now. Our focus as a company is on helping organizations achieve value with AI, whether they're just getting started or already at value or already mature. We have over 500 engineers and data scientists and have developed the industry's most robust platform for meeting all your AI needs in one unified open platform. So in terms of what that looks like, essentially the platform lets organizations experiment, create models, move them to production, and monitor them in production. So we seamlessly connect with data platforms, let you integrate both predictive and generative AI models, and then push those predictions into your downstream tools. So you can effectively think of Datarobot as the AI intelligence layer that sits between the data infrastructure and consumption layer of your organization. So with that, just want to quickly cover the agenda for today. So relatively short session, 3 key things we really want to cover. So firstly, Katie will share a little bit around OVO Energy and their journey so far in delivering predictive AI use cases and working with Datarobot. I then want to shift gears towards generative AI and talk a little bit around the reality we see of enterprises realizing value out of generative AI. So what are some of the opportunities and challenges and risks that we see there? And then finally, Katie will also talk about generative AI in the context of how OVO Energy is approaching it. So with that, I'd love to hand over to Katie.
All right, thank you. So for those of you that might not have an energy industry background, I'll just explain a little bit about OVO as well. OVO is one of the largest green energy retailers in the UK, so we supply energy to our customers. But overall, we're on like a mission to help decarbonise 4 million customers' homes. My role is that I'm the data director, so that covers data science and data platforms. And what else is helpful for you to know? No, I think I'll go into it now. So why Datarobot? Why bring in a platform to develop data science? We brought in our first data scientist in OVO in around 2017, and then quite quickly scaled as a team. We were doing things like taking the smart meter data from what was being installed in our customers' homes as part of that platform upgrade. And we were using the smart meter data to infer what customers were doing in their homes to help them with energy efficiency and to save money on heating, lighting, things like that. And we also run a big call center operation, so we had things like propensity to contact models so that we could better do our forecasting and planning of how to service our customers better. So then by I'm going to date it about 2021. We had quite a lot of models, a fairly big team. And actually, I was just off on mat leave. So before I went, I put a line in the budget, and I said, we should probably now really start doing a POC with a data science platform, just to get get the models neat and tidy, to get a clear workflow, to make it easier for new joiners to understand the way we do things at OVO, and also to make it quicker to develop models as well. So why Datarobot? Well, actually, that all happened while I was on maternity leave. I was delighted. I came back and they were like, hey, we've done it. I was like, oh, cool, brilliant. But yeah, I'm here to tell part of the story today now of kind of how we're using it. For us, it's helped us with productivity challenges. We needed a data science platform, as I said, to try and do more at scale and at pace, because there's so much opportunity with the vast amounts of data we have to help our customers. And it also means a more robust and efficient software engineering approach. And so we found that depending on the size of the project, we can now take our ideas into a POC in as little as a week, or in 4 weeks or less if you need more scoping. It's really quick to deploy some of the simpler models, like propensity models, like a classification model, things like that, because you can use the AutoML and very quickly benchmark against different approaches to the problem with the same data. You can look at the transparency and the accuracy of each solution and compare them. So we've been able to deploy over 30 models really quickly across the last 12 months. And then, I mentioned it's easier for us to platformize and productionize the models as well and integrate it into our Google Cloud Platform ecosystem. What are we actually doing with these models? Right. The first one relates to customer help. So I mentioned that we run a call center, and some of our very early models pre-Datarobot were things like propensity to contact. Now, actually, customers don't tend to think about their energy that often at all. And so what we want to do is make sure that we're making the most of any time they do contact us. And so we set up a next best action capability so that when we did have an inbound contact from a customer, we could ensure that we were making the most of the opportunity to set up their account correctly for them, like account health. So behind that next best action, you've got lots and lots of different actions a customer could take on their account, either to get it healthy or on their own personal path towards decarbonisation. And all of the different propensity models in Next Best Action are all now hosted on the same platform on Datarobot. It makes it quite a lot easier to manage. And then customer communications as well. So as I mentioned, we've got this mission to decarbonise 4 million customers' homes by helping them decarbonise their energy and their transport. And everyone's on a different stage on that journey. And we don't want to bombard everybody with, hey, we've got a new heat pump offer, or hey, we've just launched an energy experts and you can come and get advice on your home. So our propensity models help us make sure that any communications we send to customers are as relevant as possible. And we tend to iterate that quite fast, actually, because OVO, I didn't explain, but OVO is quite a product-minded company. We tend to think quite big, but then start small and scale fast, do a lot of iteration and need a lot of data to learn from. And then I'll talk more about EV detection and zero carbon living in a minute. So I mentioned that we find Datarobot on its AutoML capability is really useful for perhaps some of the simpler data science problems, like a classification problem or regression problem. But we have been testing it with stress testing it with slightly more complex problems to see how Datarobot would handle it. And we have been pretty happy with the flexibility of the system, particularly on time series data. In this use case, we were looking to predict individual customers' energy forecasts over a very specific window at a time of a lot of uncertainty in the market. And so we wanted a model out quickly. If you cast your mind back to last winter, gas prices were spiking. Customers were getting really worried about their bills and calling in a lot. And we wanted them to be able to self-serve an understanding of what their bill was likely to be in the coming months. So taking into account their usage, which is a huge driver, as well as obviously the costs, which are harder to control. So with time series data, it actually can be really quite time consuming to do the feature discovery and figure out I don't know, do you want the average of the last 7 days usage, or how important is seasonality, and what about time of use and things like that. But Datarobot did it all pretty quickly for us. Yeah, there you go. There's a little bit more of a snapshot of what it really looks like in the system there, rather than having to hand code it. And what often happens is if you're trying to rapidly get through feature discovery, you end up just picking what you might think is right based on gut feel and hunch, whereas you're doing it quite a lot more scientifically when your platform is testing absolutely everything for you and then saying, no, these are the most important features. Cool. And then electric vehicle detection. So OVO were the first company to launch a tariff where you paid a different amount per unit if you were charging your vehicle versus if you were turning on and off your lights. Right? It was cheaper to charge your vehicle. I mentioned we want people to decarbonise homes and transport. So we had a new awesome tariff. Super cool. And then we wanted to start small with our initial kind of marketing campaigns and proactively identify the right customers to target with the tariff and find the ones who already owned an electric vehicle but hadn't yet adopted our tariff. So yeah, it's a great use case because it means that we can be much more personalised, again, with our approach to customers, and also, go so far as to ensure that the smart chargers that we're offering that help facilitate this tariff only goes to the customers who are charging their vehicle with a 3-pin plug. And again, it's the kind of thing where we wanted to be able to test and learn and iterate pretty quickly, and we found a really great response in terms of our customers signing up to that tariff. Over to you.
Cool. So with that, wanted to shift gears back towards generative AI, talk about some of the opportunities and challenges that we're seeing. And so I think it's helpful to start by asking ourselves, why are we even excited by generative AI? Well, for one, it's fun and really quite amazing. So you might have seen the many variations of AI Balenciaga, such as Balenciaga Pope or Balenciaga Harry Potter. Here we even have generative AI coming up with a new slang term, snackcidents. But beyond these kind of fun examples, there are many real-world applications that are emerging for generative AI that can drive significant value for business. So one way to look at that is by trying to categorize the opportunities we see according to complexity. So on the left-hand side of this page, and apologies for the text, we have where most companies are starting today. So the focus is very much on leveraging existing organizational data to improve internal efficiency and productivity. So the most common use case we see there is essentially building a Q&A against an internal knowledge base. So leveraging essentially internal documents to retrieve and find information without having to sift through hundreds of files like traditionally you might have. So typically these are more internal-facing use cases, and we see that humans are very much remaining in the loop. So there's a lower level of risk that comes with that. So we see that companies are often starting with these use cases as internal POCs as a way to de-risk the implementation of generative AI and safely build their capabilities around Gen AI. On the other end of the spectrum, we have higher complexity use cases. So these are net new external-facing capabilities. These typically have more of a revenue growth focus. And so there's a big focus here on things like co-pilots, assistants that can be used conversationally to support with answering questions and completing tasks. And given that's often public-facing, there is, of course, a higher level of risk involved. So we see potential for misuse with adversarial users and inputs. We also see potential for reputational harm because potential for inappropriate outputs to come out of these models. So it's important to think about when we pursue these kind of higher complexity use cases, do we have the right testing, monitoring, governance in place to pursue these at that time? And then finally, there's kind of some use cases in the middle of the spectrum. So here we have things like content generation. So that's mostly done internally and can selectively be used externally. So a good example here would be content generation for marketing campaigns. And I think Katie will touch on an example later of that. So there's a ton of opportunity for applying generative AI to business. But unfortunately, the reality of applying AI in enterprises has not been great. So it's very easy for companies to get caught up in what we call SOS syndrome, shiny object syndrome. But it's important to really focus on the value that can be harnessed first, rather than the techniques and methods for achieving that value. So the problem we see is that data teams are still struggling with basic vanilla use cases and how they can derive value from those at scale. A lot of the time, organizations haven't got the foundations right, and so there's an overwhelming number of business leaders and data leaders that are still struggling to get ROI on their investments. So you might be asking yourself, why is that? And unsurprisingly, one way to think about it is, well, there are business challenges, tech challenges, and cultural challenges, and I'll cover some of those now. From a business point of view, well, it's really easy to get caught up in the hype around generative AI's capabilities, or to focus on the technical details of generative AI implementation. But realizing value out of generative AI requires overcoming some fairly classic business obstacles along the way. So if we think about the life cycle of an AI use case, that starts with idea generation. So here there's challenges in how do you identify and frame the right set of use cases, and that often stems from a lack of AI and business understanding in the organization. We also see challenges in executing use cases. So basic things like not having the right capacity, not having good execution capabilities, misalignment with IT. And then finally, a use case is only as good as its adoption. So we see a lot of challenges with organizations failing to get actual adoption of models that in theory would be great. So frequently we see that they fail to deliver value because of factors like weak business sponsorship, unclear strategy for integration, and poor change management. And that's true for predictive AI just as it is true for generative AI. So success really depends on addressing these organizational and human factors first. Of course, generative AI does raise some fairly unique technology challenges that we need to be mindful of, and that's quite different to what we've seen with predictive AI. So to name a few of these, how do we select the right technology for generative AI? It's a rapidly evolving technical landscape. We're seeing a huge proliferation of both generic and specialized models out there, and so we're now at a point where there are hundreds of open source LLMs out there to choose from. So it raises the question, what's the right model for your use case and your organization? We also see that training and hosting these models often comes with high costs, and often they're only available via remote APIs. So once again, we need to think about what's the right approach for your use case. Another key challenge is around how do we effectively use your organization's data? So these LLMs themselves are amazing, but their value only comes when it's applied to your data in a lot of situations. So we need to think about what are the right ways to, for example, fine-tune models or to use prompt engineering to ground the response of a large language model with your organization's data. So it raises a bunch of new questions there. And then I won't cover the rest, but very quickly, we see challenges around privacy, fairness, and governance. It's a lot more complicated on a generative AI. We see challenges around how do we validate, monitor, and maintain these models. So we need to look out for things like hallucinations, topic drift, safety, relevancy. All of these are fairly unique considerations when it comes to generative AI. And Another way to think about it is there's a lot more risk with generative AI in a lot of situations. So increasingly we're seeing these kind of risks manifest in real world scenarios. I won't go through all of these, but just to name a few. Fairness and bias. So we see that the openness of input prompts with generative AI, it means that there's a higher risk of inappropriate responses than before. IP, I'm sure everyone's heard of the Samsung ChatGPT leak that happened. So there's a question of how do we protect our copyright material and avoid infringing upon other copyright material. And then a bunch of other questions around privacy, safety, reliability, explainability, and broader social and environmental factors to consider as well. So none of this is really here to deter you from working on generative AI, but rather to make the case that we need to be thoughtful about putting in place the right governance, policies, and technical mitigations. And with that, I'd just like to quickly close this part by contextualizing where we see generative AI fitting within the AI landscape. And the way we see it is that predictive AI and generative AI each have their own unique strengths that make them complementary. So predictive use cases will continue to be very relevant, whether you're predicting churn or forecasting. These kind of bread and butter use cases will drive a lot of value for business in the continued future. At the same time, there's a huge amount of focus on generative AI, rightly so. It's really widely expanded the possibilities of what AI can do, but by and large, these use cases are additive and not duplicative. So we don't see that generative AI will replace the role of predictive AI, but it's not really set up to perform the same tasks. But rather, as we see it play out today, we expect that generative AI will coexist with and complement traditional forms of AI for the foreseeable future. So predictive models may continue to drive the most value, but they have challenges around explainability and building them and conveying them to stakeholders, whereas generative AI has less well-defined value today, but has more potential to be understood and consumed. Last thing I'd like to say on this is we also see that significant potential lies in strategically combining predictive AI and generative AI. So just to give an example, we could use generative AI to create new text features for predictive AI pipeline. With that, I'd love to hand back to Katie to talk about how OVO Energy is approaching it.
Thank you. Can you still hear me? Yeah? I was fiddling. Right, so we started actually with so many people at OVO so interested and fascinated as armchair users of ChatGPT, right? We all did it, we got excited. And a lot of people started to coming to me in particular and saying, can you come and help us understand more about this emerging AI capability and tell us how we can use it. And it's part of OVO's ethos is to empower all of our colleagues. I told a story yesterday about how we democratize data access by empowering people to use data responsibly. And the same is true for how we need to use AI. So responsible but effective AI is a theme here. I really like that slide that you had with the Venn diagram. It's not the right solution for every problem, and I'm seeing whether from our own trials at OVO or from what vendors are pitching to us, that the most highly effective solutions will combine approaches. And I think that will be not in use the LLM for this bit and then use this thing for this bit. I actually think very effective solutions will infuse decision logic into LLMs. It's still just technology, actually. I feel like folk are kind of thinking it's a silver bullet or a panacea and just going to fix everything, and it's still just technology, so we can't throw out of the window the normal ways in which we approach thinking about technology. What problem are we trying to solve? What value would it add? Is there a simpler way to achieve the same outcome first? How can we learn things along the way? How can we collaborate as a cross-functional team with people from product and engineering and data and InfoSec and data protection all working together to co-create the best solution? It is still just technology, but obviously that said, there are some very specific risks, and Josh touched on them earlier. And then, speaking personally, I'm a mum of toddlers, two under two, I've got twins. And humans still do better, even my babies do better than AI can at many tasks. But for now, the best approaches will understand when to kind of fall back to human expertise. A little bit more then on the enablers. So data loss prevention is really important for us. For data residency laws, we want to ensure that we've got very robust data security. Actually joining up our assets. I mean, this is good best practice as well. You would be doing this whether for a generative AI use case or a more classical AI use case. But actually committing to joining up and managing really well your data assets for more consistent and reliable AI training. And if in your business generative AI is like the sweet spot that's getting everyone interested in talking to you as a data leader, then great. Use that also as your excuse to fix some of the foundations that perhaps you've been wanting to for a while. And then, execution of early customer trials. Josh covered it as well. We found that really successful because we have so many questions, like how will customers actually want to engage with any like pure AI solution? How many times do people try and invoke Skynet? Like a lot. I can tell you a lot. That's a joke from a film. What's the film? Skynet. Terminator. Thank you. I just think about the technology and not the label, sorry. And then, actually really keeping an eye on the horizon because it's such a new capability. You don't want to make the mistake either of like spending a long time building something in-house when actually the next leap is going to come along quite quickly. And then so on to actual use cases, like quite a lot of parallels of what Josh talked through. I mentioned our big call center earlier, and our customers contact us because they need their help. And again, here is a really good example of where generative AI and an LLM is going to be really good at understanding customer intent and perhaps writing or speaking great responses. But you still need your decision logic and your predictive model to ensure that the customer gets to the right outcome for them, rather than just having a lovely chat. We're actively testing how we can also bring the human in the loop and assist our agents to better understand customer experiences, and working on like true end-to-end solutions versus our like typical decision tree chatbot. And then internally, our developers and data scientists are excited about the opportunities to improve their productivity in coding, and also we like solutions like Datarobot and like Vertex from the Google suite, where you can exist in a model garden and compare different LLMs, so you don't necessarily get that lock-in. How are we handling Q&A?
I guess we have 5 minutes, so if there's any questions for Katie or myself.
We've got a roaming mic, thank you. Oh, there we go.
Sorry, what do you mean by a next best action in the context of customer service? What actions are they?
For an energy company and an energy customer, that's a great question. So a really important thing is installing a smart meter, because if customers have still got a traditional meter, they're taking their readings manually, potentially getting billed to estimates, and they're not able to participate in the more kind of real-time experience of, firstly, like more accurate, up-to-date billing and less hassle for them, but actually those products that I mentioned where we use the smart meter data to infer what the energy load was in the home, and then we can help them with tips about how to reduce their consumption. And then those same smart meters and that data is important for some of our trials, like we'll pay you if you shift your consumption from peak times, as part of a wider trial and a specific OVO proposition. And if you don't have like half-hourly meter data, you wouldn't know whether or not that particular customer had shifted their energy from the peak and been able to, so that we can credit them back. So it's like smart meters are a real enabler to the overall decarbonisation journey. That's one example of an action, but an important one, and one of my favourites, sorry. But other things would be like setting up the right payment methods, like a direct debit, because energy usage is so seasonal. So direct debits help customers smooth out their energy load. Contact details, and it might actually be the right action for a customer to introduce them to the electric vehicle tariff or to like a heat pump trial. So both operational and kind of account health, if you like, or part of the kind of zero carbon living journey that we're on together.
Hey, how are you measuring success at this stage? Is it based on qualitative feedback, or do you have metrics in place for each of those use cases? Across
my wider team, so data scientists with all of our like machine learning products, I actually track it's multi-million pound benefit back to the business based on those smart meter installs, those direct debits that, for example, Next Best Action drives, or if it's the data science products like the ones that help customers save energy, then the benefits to the customer and in carbon rather than in like cost, in savings back to the business. So we track overall, and then there's loads of guardrail-like metrics, like customer experience is incredibly important, so CSAT, and then there's data science metrics that feed into that, like accuracy. It's a whole suite.
Hi, hello. Just a question for probably both of you. From the company side, how would you then tackle certain things within your data platform, things like data, the governability of the data audits, all of these quite tricky issues. Then how do you then push them across to the data platform vendors and say, or how that relationship works? Do you actually put that onus into them? Or is it just working with whatever is out of the box provided by the data platform? Or then can you provide feedback to them so they can implement several of your requests into the platform? Or is it just sort of like they kind of letting you what they can do for you in that sense? Or how does it work for?
So we have we're moving towards a data mesh strategy at OVO. So data management and data quality is federated across teams and in the data sources. So by the time the data is then exported to Datarobot, it should be cleaner, well managed, curated. That said, I don't know, have you got like a anomaly scanning capability that we should be using?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as part of our platform, there's exploratory data analysis, so you can understand the data you're ingesting, review kind of anomalies in that. It also will pick up any issues as part of the data, so it'll flag that for you. So, I mean, there's different models. There's people that use it just directly into the platform. Other clients have other pipelines in place to clean their data first. So.
I'm curious about your energy consumption prediction that you presented. Was this prediction of the entire path at the beginning of the period, or was this just always sort of looking ahead for a few days and following this? And also, since this was going up and down, it seemed more like whatever marginal capacity usage, not cumulative energy usage, was it? And how would it look like if you run an integral over it? I mean, are you actually predicting the pound value of the final bill correctly?
Goodness, I love the attention. So that particular example would have been a personalized energy usage forecast for that customer within the month. We have to do quite a lot of energy forecasting because we have to figure out how much we need to serve our customers so that we can buy the right amount from our renewable energy suppliers or the grid. But that particular example will have been quite, you would have seen quite a lot of fluctuation because there is quite a lot of fluctuation in particular in electricity demand during the course of the day. I can't remember I don't think it was cumulative, was it? Because it was going up and down. Yeah, so it will have been a snapshot either from probably so far that month, and for this use case we would have been using data so far that month to predict to the customer what their bill would be likely to be at the end of the month. So it would get more and more accurate as the month progressed, but it was for helping customers avoid bill shock, which in turn helped us with our call centre because we had such high demand at the time.
Hello. One question for Datarobot. I know Datarobot has been traditionally strong at predictive AI, but I've seen your Venn diagram about that combination of predictive AI and generative AI. So what's your new capabilities in this area? What's your features coming up?
Sorry, I'm struggling to hear you, actually.
Sorry. I'm just talking about the Venn diagram between the predictive AI and generative AI. So what's your new features and capabilities in this area?
Oh, okay. So Datarobot platform, there's a number of new capabilities coming out with generative AI. And please visit our booth afterwards. Happy to walk through more of that. But one aspect is around how can we essentially have templates to allow you to rapidly get generative AI use cases into production. So a great example we have right now is something called RFPbot, which is essentially around combining generative AI with predictive AI, so solving what we call the confidence problem by being able to give a score to the outputs of a generative model and understand how confident you would be to apply this model in a business setting. So one is around kind of templates that we're looking at for specific use cases. Another one is how we augment our platform itself to natively support generative AI, and we already have capabilities in there around helping you with things like building prompt templates, doing monitoring of metrics around large language model health, so MLOps but designed for LLMs essentially. So there's a lot of innovation going on right now with the platform in that space.
Thank you.
Great, and that's all we have time for today, but thanks everyone, really enjoyed meeting you all.
Thank you.